Hi folks, and welcome back to Travels with Paddles. My name's James, and today we're in Fetcham to paddle a new section of the River Mole. Here's a map of the route, and total distance was just under 14 miles. So here we are at the launch point in Fetcham. Now we've actually paddled the Mole before. We've paddled the section just before this from Brockham down to Fetcham, so this is where we got out last time round. The River Mole is around 50 miles long. It rises in West Sussex near Hersham and makes its way up into Surrey before it joins the River Thames near East Molesey, opposite Hampton Court Palace. This paddle was particularly nice for Hannah and myself as we were invited by some friends from a London club to join them. The first few hundred metres of paddling were nice easy going, but it didn't take long until we met our first obstacle, which was a real taster of what was to come. This one was easy to get through, but immediately round the corner there was something rather more substantial, a tree down with a whole pile of wood stacked up in front of it. We had to portage. Once on the other side, it was only a few hundred metres more until we came across our next tree. Including the first small branches, I make that 3 obstacles so far. If you fancy a bit of a challenge, see if you can keep track of how many obstacles we went over, round or through by the end of the paddle, and stick your answers in the comments below. I honestly don't know how many it was as I lost count. The main reason for all the obstacles on this paddle was that just a few weeks beforehand, the UK had experienced a fairly strong storm which had winds high enough to bring down trees. Work it, ladies! We were a pretty good sized group, there must have been about 15 paddlers. This time it wasn't trees that slowed us down, it was a lack of water. The river got very shallow here. Thankfully, about this point, the river started opening up and we didn't really have any more obstacles for quite some distance. In fact, we had some nice little rapids to help us along. As you start getting close to the M25 motorway, there's a nice little ramp weir that's easy to shoot and quite fun. At this point you're literally right next to the motorway, as you can see by the signs and vehicles. As you turn away from the motorway there's another little weir, and then it looked like there was a tree blocking our route again, but thankfully we could get through the branches at the end without too much difficulty. This broken weir is easy to shoot, just follow the downwards facing V. And here Dan is going to demonstrate for us a nice seesaw technique in the canoe to get over an obstacle that's just above or below the water level. It's equally doable in a tandem too. Although to minimise the stresses on the canoe you do need to be careful that both people move pretty much at the same time. You don't want to end up with one person at each end of the canoe and all the weight being taken on the hull in the centre. Having got through this tree, it was now time for lunch, so we pulled out. Checking our GPSs and maps, we realised that we'd only covered a few miles in about 3 hours of paddling. This was going to be a long day. So, after a quick lunch, we were back on the water. We're just grouping up here as we've reached Old Mill Weir, and there are 2 gates with fairly significant weirs flowing through them. If you paddle this section, you'll need to look carefully at which weir to shoot. For us, the left weir just didn't have enough water in it. It also has a surprising drop at the end of it. The right weir looks more boisterous, but the flow of water is more consistent, so we decided to shoot this one. You can see that sudden drop on the other weir now. That would have just been bump and scrape. Everyone loves to watch themselves shooting weirs on video, so here's a few of our friends. Moving on, we had a nice stretch of completely unobstructed water to paddle. When you see this road, you're approaching Cobham, and in particular Cobham Weir. Tempting as it may be, under no circumstances must you shoot down the weir. As you can see, Dan is standing on an anti-scour bar at the bottom of the weir. If you shoot the ramp, the nose of your boat will crash into the bar, and you're guaranteed some damage. What a cracking treehouse! It's best to shoot this next weir on the very far right hand side, as that's the only place where there's significant water. When I signed up for this trip, I didn't realise we were going to be climbing through trees. Our main problem here was that the banks before the tree were quite steep and slippery, so it would have been difficult to get out there. However, it's worth noting that climbing through trees is quite dangerous. If you slip and fall between the branches, you can end up getting pinned against or under the branches by the flow of the water. You're effectively caught in a sieve, which can be life-threatening. We reduce the risks here by helping each other with our boats and having safety cover. A little further down the river you come across this intriguing structure. It's a huge undershot water wheel that drives a water pump for the Painshill Park estate. Just as the going was nice and smooth, then suddenly we hit another tree. It was at this moment that a few of the group remembered that the river had split a few hundred meters above this point. A group of us went back to investigate. Happily, this channel was completely clear and we avoided the tree. There's another easy weir just before this nice looking brick bridge. By now it was late afternoon and we only had a few more miles to go. But of course we had to have a few more obstacles crammed in. I did actually manage to sneak through this gap, though I didn't film it. Such a shame to see so much rubbish in this river. We normally try and pick litter, but some of this was so big and we were so tired we didn't do it in the end. The banks either side of this tree were quite awkward, so we had a long portage. This unusual buoy was the intake for a water pump that was irrigating farmland. One final obstacle and we are on the home run at last. So, I hope you enjoyed the paddle. It did take us about 9 hours to do the journey with all the obstacles, but it was a lot of fun even if we were knackered at the end. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe on the water.